What's good, YouTube? My name is Coach, and in today's video, we're going to be reviewing the Planeswalker Party Commander deck. Keep in mind that this video is designed for people that are brand new to Magic the Gathering. So if you're someone that has a ton of experience playing the game, I would just recommend that you click the link in the description where the deck list is, and then you just review this yourself if you feel like I can't teach you anything. For everyone else, I'm going to do my best to explain the card so that if you purchase this deck, you can sit down and know exactly what you're going to do while you're playing this deck. I do need to give a big heads up because this commander deck is a Planeswalker tribal commander deck. And generally when you're playing a Planeswalker tribal deck, you tend to generate a ton of attention going your way at the board when you play. So when you're playing this deck, expect every opponent to do everything it can to attack and destroy your board. And also keep in mind that this is done for a good reason because these decks tend to be extremely powerful. So let's see how powerful this deck is. Our commander is Commodore Guff. He reads, at the beginning of your end step, put a loyalty counter on another target planeswalker you control. Planeswalkers new players need loyalty counters to activate their abilities, which is what we're going to see over here. So this Planeswalker, our commander, has 5 loyalty counters you see at the bottom right, and then he will gain 1 loyalty counter +1 whenever he creates a 1/1 red wizard creature token with tap to add a red mana. You can only use that red mana to cast a Planeswalker spell. That's pretty nice. And also just keep in mind that your Planeswalkers can technically subtract the amount of loyalty counters they have as well. So if you decided to choose the -3 that says you draw X cards and Commodore Guff deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of Planeswalkers you control, that 5 would then become a 2. Planeswalkers also tend to have something called ultimate abilities, and ultimate abilities tend to be things that are so powerful that it just ends the game, which is the reason why when you play this deck, everybody's going to target you. The first creature we have here is Cartographer's Hawk. When Cartographer's Hawk deals damage to a player, you get to put a land onto the battlefield if that player you dealt damage to has more lands than you. We have a Fog Bank. Fog Bank, Defender, Flying, prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to and by Fog Bank. So in other words, you have a decent way of protecting your Planeswalkers and your own life total, because while I'm talking, you have to keep in mind that everybody's going to be targeting you while you play this commander deck. So they're already figuring out ways to stop people from attacking you. It's exactly what I said. This card just defends and does nothing else. Grateful Apparition. Whenever this is a good card. Whenever Grateful Apparition deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, you proliferate. Proliferating allows you to increase the loyalty counters that we mentioned earlier. So if we proliferated while Guff, I should say, was at 5 loyalty counters, he's gonna then proliferate and go up to 6 loyalty counters. The next creature we have here is Anaki, Oathkeeper, for 2 mana, 0/4, right? No offense, all defense. Creatures can't attack planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays 1 for each creature they control that's attacking a planeswalker you control. You can then pay 6 mana to exile this card from your graveyard, and you can return a target planeswalker card from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is pretty nice. 2 mana, this is a good card. You keep this card inside the deck. We have the Oreskos Explorer, another card that gets you lands. Thrumming Bird, when this deals damage, you're going to proliferate, which is going to give your planeswalkers more loyalty counters, so this is good. Flux Channeler, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, so whenever you cast a planeswalker, you're going to be able to proliferate, which is good. Oh, Liori, Spark-Touched Hunter. This is a cool card. Yo, this is actually pretty sick. Flying Vigilance. Vigilance allows it to attack and block, which is nice in a planeswalker deck. Whenever Liori, Spark-Touched Hunter deals combat damage to a player, choose a planeswalker type. Until the end of turn, whenever you activate an ability of a planeswalker of that type, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copies. Guys, this card is so good that you might want to make this just the commander of the deck in general. It's flying, so you're definitely going to be able to deal that combat damage pretty easily depending on which opponent that you're attacking. It has vigilance, so it can block and protect your planeswalkers. This card right here is fantastic, guys. I'm definitely making that the commander of my deck. The next card we have here is a Sparkshaper Visionary, which says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose any number of target planeswalkers you control. Until the end of turn, they become 3/3 bluebird creatures with flying hexproof. Oh wow. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, scry 1. Cool. So you can turn your planeswalkers into birds with hexproof to deal damage until the end of turn, and then you get card advantage. Another 0/5, guys. Right? We're just talking about just full defense. This deck is all defense. We have a Wall of Denial, a 0/8 for 3 mana. This card's just going to defend everything. Cool card. Mangara, the Diplomat, which is a cool card. Whenever somebody attacks you, you're going to be able to draw a card. And then whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, you get to draw a card, which is nice. And then whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you're going to draw a card. So not even on your own turn, you're going to be drawing cards, which is absolutely fantastic. This card is just generally good in Magic. If you're playing white, you always want to play this card. And it's really nice that inside this deck, you get to have this card inside your collection when you buy it. Silent Arbiter. Yeah, this is just an auto include. No more than 1 creature can attack each combat. No more than 1 creature can block each combat. This might be the best card inside the deck. Every card that does or has this ability that restricts people from attacking, you should just be playing because you're playing Planeswalkers. We have Spark Double, fantastic card. This just enters the battlefield as a copy of a Planeswalker you control. We have Deep Glow Skate. This enters the battlefield and doubles the number of counter on any number of target permanents. Guys, this Deep Glow Skate can put a Planeswalker you control automatically into the point where they're able to ultimate. Remember, ultimates win games sometimes. And it doubles the number of counters on any number of target permanents. So you can ultimate with multiple Planeswalkers because of this card. Save this card for that moment when you can do that. Don't just play it to play it. Just wait for the right time. We have Garudas Phoenix, Flying Haste. Whenever Garudas Phoenix deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, copying the next loyalty ability you activate this turn. When you activate it, you may choose new targets. Whenever you cast a planeswalker, you may return Garudas Phoenix from graveyard to the battlefield. So this is just a bomb card. Flying Haste, you're definitely gonna be able to do that damage. It's not vigilant, so it's not gonna be able to protect your planeswalkers as well. But when you're copying their abilities, that tends to work out pretty well. This is a really good card in this deck. Kazul, obviously include Tyrant of the Cliffs. Whenever a creature your opponent controls attacks you, if you're the defending player, you get to create a 3/3 unless your opponent pays 3 for each creature that's attacking you. So if 2 creatures attack you, you get to create 2 3/3s in response. Narset Enlightened Master. Narset is a fantastic card, guys. I wouldn't even front if you made this the commander of the deck. Honestly, like, Narset is such a good card. First strike, hexproof, and then whenever she attacks, you exile the top 4 cards of your library, and any non-creature spells that come up off the top of your library, you get to just cast for free. So if you have 4 planeswalkers on top of your deck, you just get 4 planeswalkers on the battlefield. Fantastic card inside this deck. One of the most powerful commanders. I've never beaten this commander in my life before. So now we're on to the planeswalkers and or the cards that are the most important inside this deck. We have Jace Beleren for 3 mana. You can +2. Each player, everybody's going to draw a card. You can -1 to draw a card yourself or force another person to draw. And then you can -10, the ultimate ability, and target player is going to put the top 20 cards of their library into their graveyard. And if you could double this with the cards that we saw earlier, this would read the target player puts the top 40 cards of the library into their graveyard, which one could say could potentially end the game for somebody. Jace Mirror Mage, he has Kicker. When he enters the battlefield, the Jace was kicked. Create a token, it's a copy of Jace. So you can get 2 planeswalkers. You can +1 to scry 2, which is cool. And then you can 0 to draw a card and reveal it. And then you have to remove a number of loyalty counters equal to the card's converted mana value on Jace. This card is, it exists, you know. Narset, part of the Veils, part of the reason people are going to be attacking you a lot. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it allows you to draw cards, kind of in a way, and won't let anybody else draw cards. We have Saheeli, Sublime Artificer. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, or in other words, whenever you cast a planeswalker, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token, which is a creature that's going to be able to protect your planeswalkers. And then you can -2 to turn a target artifact you control into another artifact until the end of turn. So those servos can turn into a very powerful artifact you control. We have Teo, Geometric Tactician. When Teo enters the battlefield, create a 0/4 wall. So you get a creature that can defend. And then it says +1, you and target opponent each draws a card, which is not something you really want to do while you're playing Magic. -2, you can choose left or right. Until your next turn, each player may attack only the nearest opponent in the last chosen direction and planeswalkers controlled by that opponent. Cool. So it's just, once again, just controlling the way people are blocking and attacking, because everybody's going to be attacking you when you're playing this deck. Okay, so we have Ajani Steadfast, +1. You can give a creature +1 first strike, vigilance, lifelink. -2, put a counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter in each other planeswalker, which is pretty nice. -7, you get an emblem that says if a source you control deal damage to a planeswalker you control, prevent all but one of that damage. Emblems are just things that enter the battlefield, and it's a forever enchantment. It's just an enchantment that never goes away and will always be there. Emblems are game ending, as you can see. We have Jace, Architect of Thought. They always print this card, man. Until the end of your next turn, whenever a creature opponent controls attacks, it gets -1, -0 until the end of turn. This works inside this deck. -2, you can reveal the top 4 cards of your library. An opponent separates the cards, and then you essentially get to just choose a pile. -8, it says for each player, search the player's library for a non-land card and reveal it. Then that player shuffles. You may cast those cards without paying their mana costs. So you get to look in each player's deck and then cast a card, which is just good. It's definitely not a bad thing. We have Nahiri, the Harbinger. You can discard a card if you do draw a card, which is always decent. You can -2 to exile an enchantment, tapped artifact or tapped creature, which is pretty cool. And then search your library for an artifact or creature card, put it into the battlefield and shuffle your library. It gains haste. Return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. You see, this card I play in my Calamity commander deck, because my Calamity commander deck is a tap-down tribal control commander deck. So this card works really well in there, but because the creatures need to be tapped and artifacts need to be tapped to exile things, I'm not sure how good this card is going to work in this deck. But will definitely prevent people from attacking you because they wouldn't want to tap their things down. Narset of the Ancient Way, you gain 2 life and add Jeskai. Spend this mana only to cast a non-creature spell, aka a Planeswalker. You can -2 to draw a card, then you may discard a card. When you discard a non-land card this way, Narset's going to deal damage equal to that card's mana cost to target creature or player. You get an emblem at -6 that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this emblem deals 2 damage to any target, which is pretty cool. And it's only -6. I mean, you have a Narset and then you play the Deep Glow Skate and then you can ultimate automatically. The Wanderer, prevent all non-combat damage that will be dealt to you and other permanents you control. All defense, -2 to exile a creature with power 4 or greater. Cool. We have Chandra, the Legacy of Fire. It's cool how her hair is blocking out that word there. At the beginning of your end step, Chandra, Legacy of Fire, deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of planeswalkers you control. Cool. It's basically like our commander. You can +1, and then you add a red mana for each planeswalker you control. Cool. You can 0 to remove a loyalty counter from each of any number of permanents you control, and then exile that many cards on top of your library. You may play them this turn. So hey, that's a pretty decent form of card advantage there. Gideon Jorah, he says during target opponent's next turn, creatures that player controls attacks Gideon if able. You can -2 to destroy a tapped creature. Oh, I might put this in Calamity. And then it says, until the end of turn, Gideon Jorah becomes a 6/6 human soldier creature that's still Planeswalker. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to him this turn at 0, which is pretty nice. Sarkhan, the Masterless, whenever a creature attacks you or a Planeswalker you control, each dragon you control deals 1 damage to that creature. I'm not sure how many dragons you're going to have, because there are none in this deck so far. That's interesting. Until the end of turn, each planeswalker you control... Oh, I take that back. Until the end of turn, each planeswalker you control becomes a 4/4 dragon creature and gains flying. Keep in mind that if your planeswalker become creatures, somebody can target your planeswalker with removal. At -3, you can create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. I would rather just make that a dragon. Only turn all your planeswalkers into dragons if you know you're going to take someone out of the game. Ronos, Masked Inquisitor. +1, up to 2 other target planeswalkers you control phase out at the beginning of the next end step. Nice. -2 for each opponent, return up to one target non-land permanent that player controls to its owner's hand. That's kind of devastating, and the fact that you can probably double that, that's kind of wild. And then -7, we have target artifact you control becomes a 9/9 construct artifact creature and gains vigilance, indestructible, and this creature can't be blocked. Keeping in mind as well, like I said earlier, you could double that ability and just automatically have 18 unblockable damage going towards one of your opponents. Fantastic card. That card's great. Chandra, Unawakened Inferno, can't be countered, +2. Each opponent gets an emblem at the beginning of your end step. This emblem deals 1 damage to you. Guys, this is something that you want to be doubling the ability of. You know, if you can double that Planeswalker ability, each opponent's going to get 2 every time you +2 Chandra. Next time you +2 Chandra, she's going to be at 8 loyalty counters. This card is low-key godlike inside this deck right now. This card is super good. -3, Chandra Awakened Inferno deals 3 damage to each non-elemental creature, which is like a board wipe, and then you can -X, so any amount, to deal X damage to target creature or planeswalker per permanent was dealt damage this turn. If a planeswalker or creature was dealt damage this way, you exile it if it dies. We have Elspeth, Sun's Champion. Always play this card. This card is super good. You can +1 to create 3 creature tokens. You can -3 just to destroy all creatures of power 4 or greater. And then you get an emblem that says creatures you control have +2/+2 and have flying, which is fantastic. Path to Exile. So now we're looking at the spells. We have Path to Exile. Good. You get to exile a creature, Swords to Plowshares. I like that they keep printing these cards. Good. That's you get to exile a creature. These are auto includes in the deck. We have Guff rewrites history. For each player, choose target non-enchantment, non-land permanent that player controls. Those permanent owners shuffle them into their libraries. Each player who controlled one of those permanents exiles a card from the top of the library until they exile an online card, then puts the rest on the bottom of the library in a random order. Each player may cast a non-land card that exiled without paying its mana cost. So it's a Chaos Warp, essentially, in a weird way. You know, your opponent could get something a lot better than this. Chaos Warp only reveals the top card of their library, and if they whiff, they whiff. This just forces them to search for a card until it comes to the battlefield. But I mean, I like the art in this card. It's cool. If you really need to cast it, you cast it, and it's only 3 mana. It's a good card. We have Repeated Reverberation. When you next cast an instant, sorcery, or activate an ability of a Planeswalker, you get to copy that ability. You get to copy it twice. Wow. You may choose new targets for the copies. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, we went over the Planeswalker abilities, and you get to do them 3 times that turn, which is nice. Semester's End. This allows you to exile creatures and planeswalkers you control, and when they're exiled, they'll re-enter the battlefield with an additional counter or loyalty counter. Promise of Loyalty. Each player puts a vow counter on a creature they control, then sacrifices the rest. Each of the creatures with vow counters on them can't attack you, so once again, all defense in this deck. Urza's Ruinous Blast. Exile all permanents that aren't legendary. This is just a fantastic one-sided board wipe inside this deck because this just eliminates or exiles almost everything that your opponents have unless it's legendary, and you get to keep all of your planeswalkers. That's a bomb inside this deck. It's really good. We have Deploy the Gatewatch over here because it wasn't popping up. You can look at the top 7 cards of your library, put up to 2 Planeswalker cards from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. If somebody destroys all your Planeswalkers, that's when I would deploy the Gatewatch and do that. We have a Blasphemous Act, fantastic card. You can deal 13 damage to each creature. Then we have Soul Ring, always keep. Your Wayfarer's Bauble, always keep. Signet, keep. Signet, keep. Borrow Signet, cool. Felwar Stone, cool. Notice that this is 1 mana, 1 mana to play, 2 mana to play, 2 mana to play, 2 mana to play, you know, so on and so forth. These are really good mana rocks. 2 mana to play, 2 mana to play, 2 mana to play. Wow, we got a Gatewatch Beacon, which is the last new card. Wow. Gatewatch Beacon enters the battlefield with 3 loyalty counters on it. You can tap it to add a white, which is relevant. And then whenever Planeswalker enters the battlefield under your control, if Gatewatch Beacon has loyalty counters on it, you may move a loyalty counter from Gatewatch Beacon onto that Planeswalker. Cool. I mean, it's going to give your Planeswalkers an extra loyalty, which is definitely going to help to get your Planeswalkers up to the point where they can ultimate. Is it the most powerful card? Probably not, but it's definitely useful inside this deck. Honor Worn Shaku, you can tap a legendary permanent you control to untap the Honor Worn Shaku, which essentially turns your planeswalkers into mana, because every time you tap the Honor Worn Shaku, you're gonna add mana to your mana pool. This is a good card in this deck, I like it. We got Nev Disc, oh my god. Guys, when you play this, understand that if people weren't attacking you before, the moment you play this card in any commander deck, everybody's gonna attack you. Enters the battlefield tapped so that the next turn you can destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. The Chain Veil, I think everybody knew this card was going to get reprinted here. This is the best card inside the deck. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't activate a loyalty ability of a planeswalker this turn, you lose 2 life. But more importantly, when you pay 4 mana, for each planeswalker you control, you may activate one of its loyalty abilities once this turn, as though none of its loyalty abilities have been activated this turn. I mean, come on, dude. That card is just so good. Norn's Annex. Creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless they pay 2 life for each of those creatures, essentially, or a white mana. Oath of Gideon. When this enters the battlefield, put 2 1/1 creature tokens onto the battlefield, and then each planeswalker you control enters the battlefield with an additional loyalty counter on it, which is cool. Oath of Jace. You get to draw 3 cards and discard 2 when this enters the battlefield, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, you scry X, where X is the number of planeswalkers you control. This is actually a good card in this deck. Oath of Teferi. When Oath of Teferi enters the battlefield, exile another target permanent you control. It returns to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So if you want to refresh the number of loyalty counters on a planeswalker, you can. And then you may activate the loyalty abilities of a planeswalker you control twice each turn rather than only once. This card is amazing. Over here we have Cascade Bluffs, which is cool because this doesn't enter the battlefield tapped, and it taps for multiple colors. Command Tower, multiple colors. Exotic Orchard, multiple colors. Forge of Heroes is going to put a loyalty counter on a planeswalker you control, which is cool. Frostboil Snarl has the ability to enter untapped, which is nice. This has the ability to enter untapped. When you cast a planeswalker spell, you get to gain 1 life, which is nice, and you get to fix the color of your mana with it, which is cool, especially in a 5-color deck. That's kind of important. We have an Island, Karn's Bastion, perfect card inside this deck. You can pay 4 mana to proliferate and or add loyalty counters to a planeswalker you control. Mobilize District. This can turn into a creature. When that turns into a creature, it can defend a planeswalker you control. You have 4 mountains here, Myriad Landscapes so that you can fix your mana, which is nice. The Mystic Gate, which can enter the battlefield untapped and create different colors of mana, which is nice. Mystic Monastery enters the battlefield tapped. Plains, Port Town can enter the battlefield untapped, which is nice. This also can enter untapped, which is cool. Reliquary Tower. I'm not sure how many cards you're going to be drawing inside this deck for this card to really be relevant, but it's here. We have a Rugged Prairie, which is cool. Good land, enters tapped, and enters tapped, but at least you get to scry when they enter the battlefield. So one thing I'm noticing from all these commander decks is that these decks are made extremely well. We just got done reviewing the Sliver deck as well, and while some people believe that that deck may not have been the most strong or most powerful commander deck, it still was built really well. And I have to say the same thing about this deck. I think that when they were building these decks, they were very self-aware of what the play experience is going to be like, specifically for this commander deck, just because I think everyone is aware that the player that's playing the Planeswalker deck is going to be attacked a lot. And I think that when they went into making this deck, they were 100% aware of that. And that's good that they were aware of that, because I would even recommend this commander deck for even some new players if you wanted to get this deck, just because if you want to learn how to play the game through this, it's going to be a good experience. You're going to have a powerful deck that's going to play really well because everything kind of synergizes extremely powerfully. I mean, it kept kind of repeating the same things over and over again, where I was like, this defends, this doubles the loyalty, this defends, this destroys things, this ramps, you know, when somebody attacks you, this happens, when somebody attacks you, they have to do this. I think I have to give this deck a 9.5 out of 10. I think that if you're gonna play this commander deck, you're gonna have an awesome experience. Maybe not your opponents, because Planeswalkers are kind of stressful playing against, and it definitely feels like a chore, because they're not technically gaining life, but because they're putting planeswalkers into play, you can't attack your opponent. You have to deal with the planeswalker, so it feels like they're gaining life. But some, you know, most people are good sports about it, so you'll have a positive experience anyway. You guys will just laugh and you have fun. So that's gonna be my review for this commander deck. If you like this video, you can like this video. Also keep in mind, I'm going to be reviewing all of the other Commander Masters commander decks, and you can find those reviews by clicking on my channel and finding all the videos I have over there. Always remember, everybody, eat healthy, okay? Work out every single day, and most importantly, you guys got to remember to believe in yourself, all right? Peace out, people.